Hello Lima, brought to you by Good Food Restaurant, home of Happy Days, Beer Barrel, and Old City Prime. Also by Mercy Health Partners, 318 Restaurant and Bar, Lima Palette Company, and Fresh and Faded Hair Studio.
Please, 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 I can't breathe. Please, man, please, somebody help me.
Welcome to another edition of Hello Lima, a community's perspective. My name is Jerome O'Neill, and we're going to discuss today the issues, the events surrounding the death of George Floyd. A lot of talk about how this issue has affected Lima, and we're pleased to have with us Lima's legal expert, Jerry Pitts. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but everything that has happened, and it certainly has drawn a lot of emotions with George Floyd's death. Somebody who's represented a lot of clients in Lima, people know you as a legal expert. You've even handled some death clients.
Yes, I have.
So if Officer Siobhan was your client, Mr. Pitts, how would you get him off? What would you say? How would you defend him?
Well,
I'm going to turn the tables and ask you.
First of all, your initial approach is you have to really interview your client and talk to them extensively before you even think about any potential defenses. Also, what I normally do is I check their backgrounds. I like to know what their educational background. I like to know what their family life is like. So, and especially if it's a death type of case or murder one type of case.
And he's up for murder two?
He's got murder two, and then they had, it was at 3, and then they had a manslaughter 2, but then they upped it up. And what people don't understand is initially they may charge you with something, but by the time it gets actually to court, you may have 7, 8 more charges pending that are there. So therefore, what your initial approach would be is to first of all get a handle on this person's background. Now, from what I've been hearing, I haven't read that, is this young man has a history of certain kinds of behavior.
As an officer. Yep.
As an officer.
Yep.
So if you're looking at it from that angle, first, then you might want to start thinking about possibilities of, is there any kind of plea bargain here that would circumvent the situation, and that would make it easier for him to have some other relief other than what he's looking at and maximum penalty.
So your position would be first to try to plea bargain this out, which is where I think it would go to if he was your client.
See if there's an opportunity for a plea bargain this out. Now, with this being such a high-profile case, probably not at this point until things have settled down. Now, the next thing you approach, I would be looking at is, I would look at some of the psychological aspects of this young man and see if there's something there that we would consider filing an NGI, not guilty for reason of insanity, as an approach. As an approach possibly to that, to see if there is a possibility of some mental aspects that has taken him out of this situation that caused this. Now, it's my understanding that after that, you would file, if you're buying time, you would file then an independent evaluation, because the state has to provide, they normally provide and offers a psychologist to evaluate them first.
So they're going to do everything they can, Mr. Pitts, to get him, if he were your client, to get him to walk.
First of all, I'm buying time.
Interesting.
Because the more time as it elapses makes the incident of lesser significance.
Oh.
So by the time, if I can get these 2 evaluations, now you've got to understand now, since the police department has fired him, they probably should have done some evaluations and all that. So I'm going to be trying to get some discovery. You're going to have to get discovery and see what background information is there, even from the police department, as to him prior acts and things that he has done before or haven't done before. And then you got to also look at that everybody is not bad. So there's got to be some good aspects about him, because he might have gotten other kinds of merits awards and things of that nature, which would help out, in some aspect. Now we are also dealing with the excitement of the moment, which may have altered or changed his behavior, because no one is really talking about what happened before or really after those 8.5 minutes
of his. That's interesting. I was interested to hear what your perspective would be, given what you've done so much in terms of the legal aspect of it. My guess is you would push for a change in venue?
No.
No?
No. Because
interesting.
No, because you get a change of venue, that judge can, whoever in that venue can ride along, and with all the things that have happened and all the publicity, what venue do you think you're going to go to that make it least palatable?
I follow you.
So best thing to do is keep it there where the police department is.
Interesting.
Keep it there where the judges are. Now, somebody else may ask for a change of venue. I don't think the prosecution office is going to ask.
But if it were your client,
but if it was my client, I'm going to keep it right where it is.
Let me ask you something, though, Mr. Pitts. You're telling me that the judge would follow him if the venue was changed?
Could be.
So it doesn't get you automatically a new judge in another locale?
It doesn't automatically do that.
That's interesting.
Because what you're saying is that the public itself that I'm dealing with will not give him a fair trial. Are we saying the judge won't? And there's a possibility that if it's a real medical, technical issues, I might decide the jury ain't a good idea. I might want to try it to the court itself.
Try it to the court itself. That's interesting. Let me ask you something else. You said that the officer involves history may be a part of whether or not he walks, whether or not there's a plea bargain. Do you think Mr. Floyd's history, the criminal past that he had, also should be brought as we switch gears? And if you were representing Mr. Floyd, would that be a part that
But definitely, Mr. Floyd's. We got a dead person, so he can't speak for himself. But his history is definitely going to be a part of it. Either way, if I'm the defense, then definitely I need to somehow get his past in there. The way I'm going to get it in there is to the detectives and whoever else has investigated this case, and what did they come up with?
So 5 years in prison prior to the incident that he happened in Minnesota, being somebody who has had a criminal past, is it fair to say that there may have been some assumption about this, Mr. Floyd, as the officers pulled up? I'm trying to get into the legal.
You got to realize that they got this thing called leads. So if they're that's when the officers check it, a lot of your past comes up. Like if they're trying to stop you,
okay.
If they're following you in
what
the
is that
car,
called again, Mr. Pitts?
Leads. They're following you in the car. He's going to do that on his computer, and it's going to lead. It's going to tell of your past criminal history. Did you got stopped for trafficking before, or you had other driving under suspensions, DUIs? Before he even get to your car, he got a little bit of your history already. Before he even gets there. So definitely one person's history or past is going to be directly related as to how the officers per se relate.
That is interesting. That's a good perspective. So it could give that officer automatically a sense of what he or she is walking into.
It's going to be confronting. Now, if you're not going to have a jury trial, I wouldn't even bring up his even in a defense, the victim's past. There's no need, because the judge already going to have that.
He's going to have it in front of him.
That's right.
That's interesting. What we're going to do, one of the things I wanted to do, and I hope Hello Lima audience understands it's important from a legal aspect, regardless of your position, is to get the facts as they are presented by the prosecutor, by the defense witness, attorney, and certainly getting Mr. Pitts' perspective gives us an insight on what we think may be coming, because this is going to get, and you know this yourself, Mr. Pitts, as this goes to trial, this is going to get ugly, nasty, and whatever side this comes out on is going to be upset. What we're going to do is we're going to hold on and see if Jerry can stay with us for another few minutes. So we're going to take a break here, pay some bills, and we come back. I got another question or two to ask you, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Stay with us here.
from early in the morning when the Happy Days stores open. Turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people. And in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
You are the center of a universe. That's what we've learned in 160 years serving our community. Everybody means the world to someone. So when you're in here, or if someday you find yourself in here, and when all you can think about is the world that revolves around you, we'll be a world that revolves around you too. Mercy Health. Healthcare for the universe of you.
We at Lima Pallet Company thank you, Lima. In 1977, we started a small family business, and today we continue to grow. Lima Pallet is a full-service pallet and crate provider. Every customer is unique, which is why we build pallets and crates to our customers' specific requirements. Because we have our own fleet of trucks, we're able to provide customers with on-time, same-day, and 24-hour emergency deliveries. Coming together is the beginning, keeping it together is progress, and working together is success. Let's continue to succeed.
Welcome back. We've been talking to Mr. Pitts. You guys know him. You know him as an attorney in the local market and one who's been well versed in terms of the legal system. Let me ask you another question. There seems to be a push, and I don't want this to turn into legal arguments, but I think it's important to understand from a legal aspect what's going on. The push now is to defund the police, to move the police money, to allocate different. You've seen both sides of it. Is that something as an attorney would you?
No. What's the alternative? I think in our police department, it's needed. For instance, in England, if I can go back over there, it's that weapons is not necessarily carried even by their officers there. Mm-hmm. Now, what we need to do here is it's got to go back to the training, consistent training, and also they have to have officers that interact with their community, actually interact. When we had Officer Nelson and Officer Hamilton, they were always on the south end of town, but they were also educating the other officers as to activities that were going on in the other sides of town, for example, on the south side of town. Mm-hmm. And so therefore there was a reference point. What we are getting here in most counties now, we're not getting a strong integration of officers so that they can exchange information with each other so that we don't have these potential threats that are not a threat.
That are not a threat. So you mentioned 2 black officers from the past.
From the past, and so that we have Officer Chief Clemens, Davenport. We always had somebody that was able to communicate with the other officers. And another thing that we have forgotten is a lot of our officers from the past were from the communities that they represented. Mm-hmm. For example, a lot of the officers might have went to Whittier and South and Lima Senior High, Shawnee or Perry, but they were from the community they was representing, so they knew people. Mm-hmm. And from those kinds of interactions, then it works a lot better. You don't come in with the initially fear. We're taking a lot of officers who take the civil service exam. They come from surrounding counties and not actually integrated into this community. And then what the scary part is, rookies, they are given the hardest shift, 3rd shift. So that's when most things are happening. They are the least experienced out at night. When we should have our more experienced officers working that shift, but that's an undesirable shift. So we don't have our experience out there at night.
Well, you've certainly been one who's been well accustomed to the police. You've worked with them. You certainly are part of the legal system. Your position is don't defund the police departments, but to look at better training, better assimilation of officers into the community, and revise it in that fashion.
Yes, and also have an oversight committee, which they done tried before.
Yes.
A civil oversight committee, civil and criminal per se, oversight committee who are not police related.
So Jerry, we hear that about every 4 or 5 years. What happens to those boards at all?
They are boards of choice.
Meaning?
The people who are choosing the boards, those board members are not the ones that should be on the board. For example, if the mayor has a choice, he's not going to choose someone who doesn't agree with him.
Okay, all right.
And most of these boards, people are picked on these boards, are people that almost like a popularity contest.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the people who have the education and the background to realistically investigate the case.
So you put it out there. In other words, people picking friends and associates are the ones who are making up those boards in the past. And you're saying the board, you're in favor of an oversight board, but you said that board should be
one
made
that
up of
actually going to do the job, even if they're going to be paid to do the job, to oversight and take an oath that they're going to oversight and get the case properly in front of who it needs to go in front of to make intelligent choices.
Well, there still seems to be a lot of push to move into officers' past history. Would that be a part of this oversight board also?
It should be a part of the oversight because the oversight people will have a file on each officer and they will be reviewing how consistently something has come up, just like they do for the Supreme Court as the bar exam. They got people on character and fitness that, your name come up too many times, you're going to get checked out.
Wow, those are interesting.
And they make a recommendation maybe to the chief of police and the mayor and all of them, but it won't be a popularity type of thing. It'll be a business as usual, and that the mayor and the chief of police, none of them have control over this board.
Well, there you have it, and I hope you guys heard it from Mr. Pitts yourself in terms of how we can move this community forward. He certainly has had a relationship with the Lima Police Department, doesn't look for defunding the Lima Police Department, but looks for adding additional training, oversight board, and more assimilation by officers in the neighborhood. It's been a pleasure. It's certainly been enlightening, and we appreciate, as always, having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, we're going to hear from Lima's top law officer, Sheriff Matt Triglia, and get his perspective on Lima and the world around community policing and issues surrounding the Sheriff's Department.
You are the center of a universe. That's what we've learned in 160 years serving our community. Everybody means the world to someone. So when you're in here, or if someday you find yourself in here, and when all you can think about is the world that revolves around you, we'll be a world that revolves around you too. Mercy Health. Healthcare for the universe of you.
From early in the morning when the Happy Days stores open, turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people. And in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
Our barbers and cosmetologists are licensed professionals who specialize in all phases of hair. Whether you are getting a line-up, cut, beard trim, or design, our barbers will help create your unique style. With full-time cosmetologists, also taking appointments and walk-ins from lashes, presses, color, wax to braids, and weaves, Fresh and Faded Cosmetologists do it all. Call us for an appointment today. Fresh and Faded Unisex Hair Studio, the largest shop in Northwest Ohio. 419-221-FADE.
If you ain't fresh, you ain't faded.
Welcome back to Hello Lima. It certainly is a pleasure to be joined with Lima Allen County's top law enforcement officer. It's a pleasure to have you, Sheriff Triglia. It's, how would you say, these are strange times.
Yes, thanks for having me, Jerome.
Let me ask you a question. Being a police officer, being a law enforcement officer is a noble cause, but I took a little short survey and a lot of people don't know that you do another noble You're a farmer?
Yes.
I kind of, it's kind of like you call a weak survey, but I surveyed 4 people real quick because I didn't know, and nobody knows that's what you do as a side gig,
Yes.
which really isn't a side gig. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I grew up, I'm the youngest of 6 children. My mother and father are both 89 years old and still living in Lafayette, Ohio, and I grew up farming. My dad farmed, my grandfather farmed.
And you still farm to this day?
Correct.
The whole thing that goes with farming?
Yes. We have cattle, and we raise corn, wheat, and soybeans, and hay, and straw, and yeah, we do the whole gamut.
How'd you get in law enforcement?
I'll be honest.
I'm trying to think, how does that transition happen?
It doesn't, and there's no law enforcement whatsoever in my family, and I have a fairly large family. Just something I've always wanted to do, and was always interested in working with people and understanding more about it, and actually went to night school to get my peace officer certification while I work a full-time job.
So let me ask you this: the dirt of the fields or the dirt of the crime fighting, what gives you the most satisfaction?
Oh, I definitely like helping people when it comes to this job here. There's big satisfaction when you can really change a person's life. There's nothing like it. It's amazing. Farming, clear on the other end. It's nice to know that there's a possibility that you're feeding a lot of people out there.
Absolutely. And my hats go off to you, particularly in the farm and agriculture industry. There's nothing better than what you guys do to help us as well as fighting crime. Let me change gears here and talk about DeWine's put in a series of reforms lately. And some of them were no chokeholds, sort of a standard for use of force, body camera for Ohio State Police patrolmen. Is that something, how did those reforms look to you in terms of where they're going and how they're going to affect your law enforcement agency?
Well, I truly believe there is going to be some reforms, Jerome, and I think training is huge. I've said this in the past.
But let me stop you there, Sheriff. When you talk about reforms, and I want to spot what you do. You have very little, and I see your cars in downtown Lima. I see your cars really in the heart of what we would consider the battlefield, if I can use that terminology. There's little feedback, little pushback from the sheriff agency. So when you talk about reform, how are you doing so well with what you're doing?
We're keeping people informed. It's very obvious that I have 2 public information officers in this office, which is something we've never had. Transparency before I took office was never a good issue here. And now transparency is of the utmost importance to me.
You have a good relationship with the community.
I do.
And you're saying a lot of that is due to the transparency.
Yes. I try to have the best relationship with the community and the best relationships with the media. I told my detectives early on when I took office here, it was very important that everything was always kept quiet. And I told my public information officers and I told my detectives and everybody, I said, if the media can have it, they will have it.
They will have it. Let me ask you a question, and let me address the elephant in the room, so to speak, if I could, Sheriff. The downtown, there was a survey done, and they spent a lot of money for a grant, maybe 14 months ago, the economic development gurus in the city of Lima, as well as in the county. And I'm going to quote something coming out of that grant. It said, out of that survey, downtown safety. During the course of our stakeholder interviews, loitering deterred people from visiting the downtown, especially at night. A perception of safety issue also is associated with downtown. Crime rate in downtown is more than 3 times the national average. And I say that because all the development that's going downtown Lima, you can look out of your doors and this agency and see all this thriving economic prosperity that is happening. I, as a developer, and I, as somebody who is hearing some of the tea leaves, feel that crime in downtown Lima is a under the rug type of a topic. As Lima's #1 law enforcement officer, there's nothing you can do to address it, or does it bother you? I guess it's an open-ended question.
Yeah, that is an open-ended question for me, but the fact of the matter is, I help the city police officers out as much as I can. They call for backup, we're in here, and we're helping them. Crime is obviously higher in the city than it is throughout the county. The new crime rates are staggering at this point, and they're concerning to me, extremely concerning.
I think that's what the public wants to hear. Are they concerning enough to cause of action? Putting cameras and body cameras on is not going to solve this issue of crime. Adding more minority law enforcement is not going to solve what's going on in downtown Lima.
You're exactly right, Jerome. If you can put body cameras on every one of my officers, but it's not going to solve the crime problem that we have going on right now.
It's not going to solve the murders, the rapes, the assaults, the carrying weapons when you're felony. How do you address that, Sheriff, at the same time making the public feel like there's reform happening?
You need to address those things right there when you're talking about carrying guns and things like that for people that shouldn't be carrying guns. Now, I'll make that very clear. I'm pro-gun.
Absolutely.
I have no problem with people carrying guns that are allowed to carry guns.
Absolutely.
But I also have a big problem with people carrying guns that are not allowed to be carrying
and
guns.
I deter that. I qualify that by saying felonies carrying guns.
Exactly.
We need those of us that are investing in downtown Lima, those of us that are looking at these young kids coming in and are going to be attending the Rhodes State University, the Rhodes University College. Those of us that are looking at all these young people that we want to keep in our community. We are asking law enforcement to, you know what? Do things that you may not normally do without worrying about whether or not you're going to get blowback. And that's easy for me. I'm not an elected law enforcement.
Well, Jerome, I can tell you that the crime rate in the city, I think, is high now. I can't imagine the shootings and the murders we may have if it wasn't for Lima police officers and county deputies making traffic stops. I can't tell you the countless guns were taken out of vehicles on traffic stops. I don't know whether they're going to commit a crime or whether they have just committed a crime.
Is that right?
But I'm telling you, it's countless number of firearms were taken off of people.
And I think that's what needs to get across to people, particularly what you guys are doing. And I'm not even going to quantify the conversation about talking about defunding the police. I think that's as ridiculous as a conversation. I wouldn't lower my stance by asking you that question, because I think the people who are asking for defund the police don't want what they're asking for. Having said that, we need law enforcement presence in our communities, particularly in Lima's downtown.
Yes, and when you talk about, I'll just touch on it, defunding the police, I would say you'd have to go the other way where we're at. I'd say you'd have to have a force, a huge force in Lima and be able to, maybe even walk a beat, maybe bike officers, have a very visual presence in Lima.
And and I know we're going through a lot because we have so much we'd like to get through, and I'm getting a countdown in my ear in terms of time, so we'll probably run this segment just a little longer. You have a fairly popular presence in the community, both as an elected official and people respect and trust you. Is there a possibility of a joint task force between you and Chief Martin that says we're going to put a 6-month action plan in place, and here's how we're going to address this?
I would have no problem with that, Jerome. I work with Chief Martin very well.
Oh, yes.
But I would want to sit down with him and definitely see how this would look on paper and how this would look in the community for both sides of it. But I would stress I would work with Chief Martin probably only on this because we are both the law enforcement officers and know how to handle it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that needs to be said with a certain amount of understanding that based on your background and based on your pedigree in terms of fighting crime, nobody can fight crime better than the law enforcement officers on the street. And we in the public need to respect that.
I agree.
Well, it's been a pleasure. We have a little more time to get through. One last question I'd like to ask you about, and that is the process of you guys have moved quickly with the protest and the things that are going on in that, in terms of making sure our city has stayed safe. And in terms of the protests that have been happening in downtown Lima, was really what I'd call a safe, peaceful walk. How have you been able to do that in terms of what the other communities are going through?
I don't attribute anything that I've done to the safe and the peacefulness. I'm glad. I'm tickled to death at the way it's been. It's been very peaceful, and they have been safe, and nothing's been destroyed or nothing's been destructive. I attribute that to just the way people want to march and want to protest. We had some in front of the jail here Sunday, protesting an arrest that was made over the weekend. I have no problem with it. You could stand out here. That's your First Amendment right. Just like I said, I'm pro-gun. I'm pro-First Amendment too. And I feel you ought to be able to express that, and I want you to peacefully. But at that point, when it becomes unpeaceful, then we need to talk, and then we need to figure out a situation that we're going to put ourselves in to help everybody and the community. And
because you have such a great rapport with the community, with your open door policy and your communication transparency, I think people feel comfortable having their voice.
And I hope so, Jerome, because that's what we've really tried to work towards, the transparency, seeing what we're doing. This office was under a dark shadow for a while, and it took a lot to come out of that. But I think we're coming out of it and going in the right direction because of the transparency, because of us being willing to say, hey, we did it wrong, or we did it right, or we're willing to do it this way, or we're willing to listen.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sheriff. It's been a pleasure, and as always, stay safe.
Thank you, Jerome.
When we come back, we're going to be joined with Alize Thomas, the lady who kind of started the organized protest that was peaceful, and hear what she has to say. Don't go away.
From early in the morning when the Happy Day stores open, turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people. And in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
You are the center of a universe. That's what we've learned in 160 years serving our community. Everybody means the world to someone. So when you're in here, or if someday you find yourself in here, and when all you can think about is the world that revolves around you, we'll be a world that revolves around you too. Mercy Health. Healthcare for the universe of you.
We at Lima Pallet Company thank you, Lima. In 1977, we started a small family business, and today we continue to grow. Lima Pallet is a full-service pallet and crate provider. Every customer is unique, which is why we build pallets and crates to our customers' specific requirements. Because we have our own fleet of trucks, we're able to provide customers with on-time, same-day, and 24-hour emergency deliveries. Coming together is the beginning, keeping it together is progress, and working together is success. Let's continue to succeed.
Mama, I can't breathe. Mama! Can't breathe. I'm not resisting. The cops go free. They're gonna kill me.
Welcome back to Hello Lima. It's certainly a pleasure to be joined by one of the organizers of this past march. You saw it on TV, some of the screens and some of the shots. So we're here joined by Alize Thomas. And I'd like to start with you by saying me, and I'm sure many of me folks, us old folks, are kind of surprised about your age.
Yeah.
You are a young student, graduate, who sort of felt this passion to put this march on, this peaceful protest in Lima a couple of days ago. Mm-hmm. Tell me how it started and what you were thinking through this process.
So basically, I was seeing all of the posts about police brutality and George Floyd and the riots in Minneapolis and in California, just all over, and I wanted to be a part. And I couldn't necessarily fly out to Minneapolis to be a part of that. So I made a post on Facebook and said that I wanted to do something bigger than myself, and reached out to a few friends who I know have a very strong feeling about police brutality and hate crimes towards the Black community. And we decided that we would put on a march.
And that's how it started.
Yes.
Now this was a Black Lives Matter march,
Yes.
And how did that come to being a part of what you are about with respect to this march?
Mr. Floyd was the ignition that he started a fire in the lives and the souls and the hearts of the Black community. He was just a part of everything that's going on. So while it was for George Floyd, it wasn't for George Floyd alone. It was for everyone who has been slain by the hand of those who are supposed to protect and serve.
Your march drew a lot of people. It was
Yes.
one of the largest ones that's happened in Lima, downtown Lima. As an 18-year-old going through that process of organizing it, and I know you're kind of being Timid, you did a lot. You put
Yeah.
it on, you discussed with people, you made sure this happened, you contacted people who could help you put it on. And I'm going to be very poignant when I say, as an 18-year-old, that surprises people who don't see this type of talent in Lima, regardless of whether or not you believe in the march or whether or not you don't believe in it. When you get hundreds of people in downtown Lima, what were you nervous? What anticipations did you have about how this thing was going to come across, given how it makes people feel some sort of way?
I was definitely nervous. We did have the police escort us, and they assured us that, you know, if anything was to happen, they would be right there, and they had our backs 100%. But there,
Good relationship with the police.
yes, there is a lot of ignorance in Lima, you know, with us having one of the biggest KKK organizations. So we were definitely nervous, and we did talk about it. We had people who had things in their backpacks, such as like bandages and something that would knock off the feeling of mace if we were to have been maced, or, you know, anything that could possibly help out if something was to pop off in that sort of way.
So why did this march grow so big compared to the first march that was put on? What made your march seem such a revolution?
Publicity, definitely. I made an event on Facebook, and I was actually on vacation when I planned most of this. So, you know, I didn't really, not to say enjoy the vacation, but my mind was definitely on the topic of...
The whole time you were on vacation?
Yes.
And so you came back and you put action into
yes.
your thoughts and your passion.
Yeah. Curtis Shannon, he did a couple protests while I was on vacation that I couldn't attend. So I got him and reached out to him to join our march and be a part of us instead. But because I was on vacation and I was in the middle of nowhere at the time, it created 3 events instead of 1. So there were about 16 people saying they were going to one event, about 43 saying they were going to the other, and 600 saying they were going to the other. So it found everybody. And
your event and your post.
Yeah.
What happened though, Alize? Did something happen at one of the marches where somebody got pushed?
Yes.
How did that affect you, and what was that? What happened?
So I got word while I was on vacation that at one of Curtis Shannon's marches, a white man got out of his truck and pushed one of the women that were marching. So that kind of made me think, you know, okay, they just pushed her, but what will happen at our march, you know, when there's more people, more black people fighting for our rights as humans, you know, like anything could have happened.
Anything could have happened. I'm gonna focus on that because your march was peaceful.
Yes.
And your march was diverse, and you can see it on the screen when we showed a few of them. We got to show a few of your pictures in terms of posting them on the show. Given how diverse that march was, and given how passionate people were about what you put on, where do you go from here as a young person?
So
where do you take this movement that you've started?
I want to take this movement and I want to continue it until I no longer have to. I want, you know, equal rights for the black community, whether it's fair trials, not being harassed by police, you know, just basic things that we shouldn't even have to fight for, because although we might be darker than other people, we are still humans.
So you're looking at this being more than just a George Floyd event, so to speak, if I can use that terminology. That process is certainly comforting, and it doesn't matter whether or not you believe or don't believe. It's just comforting knowing that young people like you are taking an active role in where our community is going, taking an active role in the world, and taking an active role in changing the lives of people that on shoulders that you stood up, and I applaud you for that. I'd like to say that you'll be hosting a Zoom teleconference. I call it a teleconference. I don't know what that old term means for us old folks, but what do you guys call it now? A digital platform where you're going to be talking to a bunch of students, and you guys are going to be just having a sort of a, can I use the word rap session? Are you looking forward to that?
Oh, 100%. There's a lot that needs to be discussed, and it's going to be a very diverse Zoom meeting. So I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say, no matter their culture.
And you're going to host it?
Yes, I am.
Well, that's certainly a pleasure. We enjoy having Azalea Thomas, Alizé Thomas, pardon that, on our show. I'm a great student, great young person, and watch a Zoom teleconference when it comes on, and we're going to look and hope that hear a lot more about her and where she's going as she blossoms into the Lima community. Thank you. Welcome to another segment of Hello Lima. Certainly it's a pleasure of having with us today somebody that you guys have known from a recent show. We have with us Sergeant Gabe Brooks. He's been one of the leaders in our community, both in terms of being an advocate for speaking out, as well as just being somebody who's been engaged in our community and people that I like to reach back out to, the young people, and say, what are you thinking? This time, Sarge, we get to talk to you about a topic that has sort of been in the press lately, and one of those things that sort of made people emotionally tied to this topic has been race. I've always liked to hear, particularly from the military folks who have been fighting and dying for our right to protest, our right to believe in certain things. When you fight and when you go to battle, Sarge, and you come back and you see this protest, how does it affect you? And what's the perspective of a guy who actually had bullets flying over their heads?
Well, you actually get emotional because you raise your hand voluntarily to go serve your country, and then you come back and you and your race are treated less. And that goes with like All Lives Matter and also Black Lives Matter.
So there's a sense that you don't feel the treatment is the same, although you're fighting for the country?
Oh, we see it. The treatment isn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
How could it be the same if black men, our race, are being killed for no reason?
Let me ask you this, and that's a good point, Sarge. I get the feeling, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it's not that way when you guys are in the trenches, when you guys are fighting. You guys are fighting as brothers and sisters, and I'm using some of your words here.
Yes. When you go to the military, you go to basic training, you got everybody coming from all different types of backgrounds, different races, where they can actually mend you by the time of graduation. Mm-hmm. You guys are marching the same. Mm-hmm. There's one color, and that's the uniform. And especially when you go in the trenches, when the bullets and stuff flying, guys we're not really fighting for the country. We're fighting for each other to get each other home, back to their families.
Yeah. And so when you come back and you see the protests and you see the march and you see the issues that are going on in America, that seems to be something that makes you feel...
It is very hurtful. And I feel like every African American that have went to serve their country voluntarily, especially, it's a disgrace to us. Mm-hmm. Because I had good friends that have died on the battlefield, African American, and I couldn't even tell you that's not allowing their legacy to live.
And that's good information. Let me ask you another question, though. The protest in itself, and you've always been one who's been more of a bridge builder. Mm-hmm. And I've heard you, and I've listened to you before and talk about we're all one people. In fact, I think if I had a quote here, we have to respect, love, care about ourselves before we can truly care about others. That was a quote from you. Yes. So you come across as one who, how do we get beyond this? Where we are, and how does Lima move forward and continue to move forward as it has been with the help of yours, people like yourself?
We have done protesting and
peaceful,
and as I don't condone the looting and the rioting, but I get it with the frustrations.
Yes,
I get it with the frustrations.
Understand.
Just like they say, cap kneeling, it didn't do anything. It didn't wake up nobody or anything like that. So with the rioting and the looting, I get it, but it's not right. But I get the frustrations. I understand it, and it's going to take more than the black race to do anything, because we're not in those positions to make change. You see what I'm saying? It's our fellow white brothers and sisters and non-African Americans that's going to have to stand up for us as well and say we're not going to tolerate this oppression.
That's an excellent point. How do people like you keep such a positive attitude to keep moving forward? What would you say to young people today, Sergeant, younger than yourself, that are going through these troubling times?
Keep fighting. Keep fighting for what you believe in. Don't change what you believe in. Don't change. Don't feel like you have to accept less of what you deserve.
Stand up for what you believe in.
Stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for what you. If you don't, then it's going to continue to stay the same.
And be peaceful about it, like you've always preached.
Correct.
Those are excellent points. But again, thank you, Sarge. It's been a pleasure as always talking to you, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future as we continue to have these dialogues about positive people like you making it in our community.
Thank you.
You are the center of a universe. That's what we've learned in 160 years serving our community. Everybody means the world to someone. So when you're in here, or if someday you find yourself in here, and when all you can think about is the world that revolves around you, we'll be a world that revolves around you too. Mercy Health. Healthcare for the universe of you.
From early in the morning when the Happy Days stores open, turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people. And in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
Our barbers and cosmetologists are licensed professionals who specialize in all phases of hair. Whether you are getting a line-up, cut, beard trim, or design, our barbers will help create your unique style. With full-time cosmetologists, also taking appointments and walk-ins from lashes, presses, color, wax to braids, and weaves, Fresh and Faded cosmetologists do it all. Call us for an appointment today. Fresh and Faded Unisex Hair Studio, the largest shop in Northwest Ohio. 419-221-FADE.
If you ain't fresh, you ain't faded.
Welcome back to Hello Lima. It's been an interesting topic that we've had today. We've been able to talk from a number of different people about issues that have been sort of on the top of minds for a lot of Americans, particularly those in Lima, Ohio. It's a pleasure to welcome with us today Inspector Chris Jackson with the retired Lima Fire Department. How's retired life going?
Just as busy as ever, George.
I know. You've been retired. You've been retired how long?
6 months now.
6 months now?
6 months.
Wow. You miss it?
I do. And initially I did. Matter of fact, initially the guys kept saying, "Why are you here every day?" I was showing up at the fire station almost on a daily basis. And you just miss the guys, but now I've kind of gotten used to it, and a lot of other things going on in my life that's keeping me occupied.
Well, having said that, keeping you occupied, Mr. Jackson, you've always been an integral role in the city in terms of young people and changing lives and developing positive attitudes for people who feel like they have met their last option. So it's always good to get your perspective. Now, this issue that we're dealing with, and Lima's had its share of what you call race issues, for lack of a better word. And as this protest has kind of picked up steam over the last couple of weeks, particularly as it's affected those, and our hearts go out for the murder of George Floyd, what I want to do is find out how's Lima being affected by this, and I go right to the person who has his hands on the pulse. You, Chris, what do you think? What do you feel? And are we moving in the right direction in terms of race relations? And what could we be doing better in Lima?
I think we are. Let's go back a little bit, Jerome.
Yep.
You've been around. I've been around, and you remember back when we had the study circles years ago.
Jane
Jane Elliott actually come And that was the start of it. And I think Lima over the years has been pretty good with race relations.
I forgot about the study circles.
And I think we've been pretty good. I think part of the problem is, as a matter of fact, it's interesting. I had a meeting with the chief the other day, Police Chief Kevin Martin, a few days ago, and we kind of talked about it. I think one of the things here in Lima we talked about is the law enforcement. We haven't had a lot of major incidents here with our law enforcement, but one of the things he kind of agreed with is that may need a little bit more diversity training. Over the years, I know people say, well, we got to have more black officers and things like this. And I actually did recruiting for the city of Lima for probably over 20 years. And we just couldn't do it. I mean, we did everything we thought. We traveled out of town. We brought in other people from out of town companies. And we did put forth a decent effort. I think a great effort, actually.
Getting more minorities.
Trying to get more minority police officers.
The
problem we always run into is locally is people saying, well, I don't know if I can arrest so-and-so, because there's a lot of family in Lima. So a lot of the younger people that we thought would be great officers are kind of like skeptical because of that aspect.
Let me ask you this, and you certainly have been on the front line, both, as I said, opening this up in terms of talking to young people and talking to people who are getting out of college and so forth, and as you try to recruit minorities. I'm looking at this protest that's been sweeping across America. It seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jackson, it seems to be more than just adding minority policemen to the police force. In other words, the incident that we witnessed in Minnesota had to have some frustration to it. In other words, when they looked at that Mr. Floyd on the street, it didn't seem like they felt he was a person.
Yeah, and I think
how much training are you going to be able to do to change that mindset? And is that something?
That's a good question, Jerome. And I think what has happened is over the years, the African American male has been devalued. And that goes back to what I think we talk about. Some of it has to do with, I think a lot of officers look at like the Chicagos and some of the other cities where the black on black crime is particularly high. And I think they look at, at times that we don't care about our own selves, so they start to devalue us. And as I look at that video, which I've looked at over and over again, and I don't know if some people know it, one time I was a police officer before going to the fire department. And I've never seen anything like that. There's no training that takes place that teaches an officer to do that. So my thinking is, at that point in time, what was that officer thinking? When this man is begging for his life, when other people are begging for this man's life, and even after you've seen there was no movement, why would you keep your knee in his neck?
And that's the perspective I want to get. I mean, when we talk about this, and it's always great talking to somebody who's tempered like you are, in terms of just has a great awareness about him, and certainly with your background as an ex-police officer and longtime city fire official, when you talk about, and I'm using your words here, the devalue of someone's life, is the black community, and I'm not putting words in you. That seems to be a sense of what people think about blacks. Is that what I'm hearing, Chris?
And that's what I think, because I've been, since the Mr. Floyd incident, I've kind of looked at social media, and you see a lot of people making that comment on social media, like, why aren't you guys marching when there's black on black crime? You guys don't care about this. So I think a lot of Americans starting to sense that, and they're devaluing us as a people. And what they understand, there is a difference. Yes, black on black crime is wrong, it's horrible. But the thing is, they got to look at, most of those incidents are happening in the streets with people that are in that atmosphere. When you take a police officer who takes an oath sworn on the Bible to protect, that's what we expect you to do, protect. There is a difference. Yeah, it's a life being lost either way, but there's a difference when the person that I'm looking to protect me is taking my life.
It's taking your life. Well, that's a good point, and I'd like to make sure that our conversations here are real. Let me ask you a question though, and see if this sounds familiar. As I read a quote from you, Chris, I would say this: black on black crime, killings, rapes are equally pervasive and idiotic self-genocide. We don't need white people to treat us bad. We treat each other like beep and expect white people to solve the issue. I thought that was a profound statement. Can you expand on that?
I think because, again, we're doing enough damage, and I think I had a discussion with some gentlemen the other day. We as a people, we've got to make that effort. We've got to make ourselves feel more valuable. We've got to go and make our young people feel more valuable. So as they grow, we need more, like we said, police officers, attorneys, judges, but we have to make that change also. We know we're part of the problem, and we know we have to be part of the solution. But again, let us handle that. I hear people say all the time about, I don't see color. Well, that's not a true statement. Unless you're blind, I see color. That's what makes America unique, because of different races, different ethnicities. That makes the difference. But at the same time, we are seeing a large number of African American males dying at the hand of law enforcement. That is a problem.
And you see this movement has sort of been galvanizing, Chris, with people from all races, from all backgrounds. Has that surprised you?
It has, Jerome, because I looked at some of the other cases we've had in the past, and we've had some rioting and things, but I've never seen it like this, where I'm getting people that are calling me, telling me stories. I had a gentleman tell me the other day how one of his white neighbors, and he's been in this new neighborhood for a few years, about a year or so, just showed up at his door, apologizing for what's going on in America. The guy was a Christian, and first he said he thought, I don't need you to apologize. We said more and more he saw that this guy was from the heart. The guy was saying, we need to talk. Our church is here.
Different races.
Different race. And I got another person called me the same thing. Hey, I had some white neighbors come, and now we're having dialogue in our neighborhood. So I think you are starting to see a change in America. One of two things is going to happen. There's a faction out there we talked about that wants to cause a race war. And then there's a faction of people that say, enough is enough. We're all going to work together. So I'm thinking right now in America, that's what's going to happen. We're going to either go one way to the right or to the left. I feel that we're going to go to the right, that people are going to come together.
That's a good point. So what you're saying, that this could be a tipping point for race relations long term.
I definitely believe it will be.
That's interesting in terms of whether or not, and you may have a point there, Chris, and I like the candid that you bring to this conversation. You think there's some divisiveness going on that likes to keep Americans divided.
Yes, I've actually, Jerome, in the last few days, I've had a conversation with a friend of mine that's an FBI officer and a friend of mine that's a police officer, African American. Both these guys are African American police officers, and they're saying that, with the FBI, they're seeing these factions that are coming into play. There's a faction out there called the Boogaloo Boys, and their number one agenda is to kill police officers first. But they made the statement in the midst of killing these police officers, maybe doing these riots and uprisings, we can kill a couple of Black and African Americans at the same time. So those factions are out there.
And we've had history that's shown people who have started race wars. A couple of months ago, a couple of years ago, I think there was a multi-killing where somebody thought that that's what. So I like that perspective from the standpoint that it is real conversation and real talk about what's going on in our community. You bring up, and I want to make sure that I keep on topic here because you have such an interesting array of knowledge. The study circles. I want to go back to, because as we talk about Hello Lima community perspective, Lima is the heart of so much movement in Northwest region. Is Lima, when they did those study circles, you're right, there has been open dialogue about race in Lima as we continue to fight over this hurdle that we're in. Is Lima going to come out of this, Chris, stronger also? I think you're on the streets and you're helping push the movement.
I think we can, because if you go back to the study circles, you remember after the study circles, a lot of the churches started bonding together, and I know that still exists. I know there's some ministers that I know, Black and white, that still fellowship together, they still worship together.
To this day.
To this day. And I think that's been huge, and I think that's the type of thing that's going to carry us through, getting back to those days like that.
What do you, as an ex-police officer, as well as a fire official, what are you telling young people today in Lima? You're speaking to them every day. Don't get me. Right. I know you are.
Yeah. Well, what I'm telling them right now, and with this uprest, is just to stay calm. A lot of them are heated. A lot of them have their ideas. But I'm telling them, let's work together. The young man actually that's been leading the march, he and I met with the chief of police the other day. And as a matter of fact, out of that meeting, the chief wants that young man to come back and have a one-on-one, because that young man had some great ideas he thought the police department could implement. And Chief Martin was very receptive to the point to say, I want you to come back. And so you and I can sit down, and maybe you can be that catalyst to get some of these things going within our department.
And those types of bridges are led by people like you who are out there in the communities. So that guy who could be organized a march, and I know he'll have him on our show and he'll be speaking about it also, is one of the ones that's sitting down at the chief's desk because of people like you in the community.
Right. 19-year-old young man.
Making those kind of changes in Lima, Ohio.
Yes, and like I said, my part was just to put the meeting together. I didn't say much of anything in the meeting because I wanted the focus to be on our young people.
That's excellent, and that's why I always have a pleasure. It's always a pleasure of having Chris Jackson join us, because of the pulse that he has on the community and the kind of impact that he's making in the community, both in terms of keeping things peaceful, but at the same time keeping our city moving forward. And it's been a pleasure, Chris Jackson, and I appreciate having you again on Hello Lima.
Thank you, Jerome.
Hello Lima, brought to you by Good Food Restaurant, home of Happy Days, Beer Barrel, and Old City Prime. Also by Mercy Health Partners, 318 Restaurant and Bar, Lima Palette Company, and Fresh and Faded Hair Studio.